countries in terms of financial inclusion if I look at our neighbors. So we have slipped significantly, ladies and gentlemen, and that is really a sad story. And I'm sorry, I'm a bearer of bad news, but these are the realities which we need to understand and accept and see what the solutions are to bring in more financial inclusion and try to change it. If I look at institutions in Bangladesh, India, Sri Lanka, and other countries, they have nurtured a large number of institutions. We haven't. Kabir talked about 27 MFIs, 12 microfinance banks, or 13. Still a very small number. If I compare it to India, which is over 8,000. If I look at Bangladesh, again over a few thousand. Even Sri Lanka, from a country which is so small in population, has over 800 microfinance institutions. So just visualize how poor have we been in terms of creating institutions, and unfortunately the only vehicle that we used to have in creating these MFI institutions was PPF, which no longer does that. So there is no institution in the country which is doing what it ought to be doing in terms of building more institutions so that we can reach to the grassroots levels and really try to address the poverty alleviation part of it. From my perspective, if I was to look at it, the government, the development agencies, the donor and commercial banks need to take measures to continuously ensure flow of capital and flow of liquidity, because without that, I think this sector is not going anywhere. Today, that's the biggest challenge. Capital being one part of it in the microfinance banks, but capital is also an issue for MFIs. Because at the end of the day, they have no ability to mobilize deposits. They're solely dependent on borrowing. And we as PMIC are almost 75% of the borrowing. So effectively, we are quasi-equity holders sitting in those MFIs. Because at the end of the day, if we reduce it, then there is an absolute issue of their ability to sustain and grow. So just visualize this entire industry is lopsided when it comes to capital and liquidity. So those are real challenges. We talk about economic challenges, we talk about all the doomsday scenarios, but what we forget is, where is the silver lining? To me, there is a huge silver lining within this context of our economy, and that is agriculture. And we've forgotten about agriculture. We have completely lost sight of agriculture. If you look at if I look at 5 crops, they require something very close to 2.6 trillion rupees. And I'm talking about, 5 major crops. And only 1/3 of that funding is available to this entire sector. 1/3. And out of that 1/3, only 10% is available to small farmers, which are 90% of the 8 million farmers that you have. So just visualize the challenge that you have created. One, you've not given enough liquidity to a sector which has tremendous ability to bounce and help you in terms of your economy, because it constitutes 22.7% of your GDP. It employs something like 65% of communities. And it also contributes 80% to your exports in an indirect manner. So really, have we forgotten what agriculture means? We have forgotten food security. Have we forgotten how do we really need to help our economies and create, rather than creating consumption loans and consumption type facilities, shouldn't we be looking at creating facilities that can create productive assets that can help alleviate poverty to the end farmer? And that to me is the real challenge. I'm happy to report at PMIC, we have piloted a couple of projects in collaboration with an agri-tech company. And the results are phenomenal. We were able to increase the yield. We were able to reduce the cost of imports. And we were able to create almost a 20 55% increase in farm income. Now, all we did was that we made sure that the farmer had access to good seed, the right fertilizer, the right pesticides that are required from a time-to-time basis, and more importantly, providing them a consultancy service of better farming and ensuring that they are using water when it needs to be used, they're using fertilizer when it needs to be given, and they're using pesticides when the need arises, rather than just doing it based on their own traditional ways of doing it. So really the idea was to hold their hand, create an opportunity, educate them, and help them increase the yield. And 28% yield increase is phenomenal. In the 5 crops that we produce, it's horrifying to see that we are only 25 to 50% of the world yield per acre, which shows how underperforming our agriculture sector is. It is sad, Deputy Governor Saab, and you've been a veteran in this area, you know it better than I do, and we've talked about it in the past also. The banks have shied away from agriculture. The worst part is microfinance sector has also shied away from this sector. It used to lend 20% at one point in time. Now they've reduced it. So where does the farmer, the poor farmer goes? And they are 90% of your entire farm population. So where does he get access to capital? Where does he get better quality seed? Where does he get better quality fertilizer? Where does he get better quality pesticides? He goes to an earthy, which is an intermediary, and he pays a leg and an arm for that. So he's losing on productivity because that guy is giving him bad seed, is giving him old fertilizer, giving him bad pesticides, and we as consumers are using substandard products, substandard produce. And that's a huge issue. The biggest challenge today, again, is really between the farm to market. One is pre-harvest and then the post-harvest. The amount of leakage and loss that we have in our post-harvest is mind-boggling. You know, it is just sad that we are creating an opportunity but yet not capitalizing it and really leaving our food security at the backdrop of somebody else, some donor to come and help us. I mean, that's totally unacceptable as far as I'm concerned. Our strategy at MIC is very clear. We want to create an agri-ecosystem, and we need support from all of you because we all need to collectively work. And there is a great opportunity. I think NRSP has done a great job in one of the transactions in rice that they've done. That is the model that we need to pursue. They've created that opportunity. Now you have accredited warehouse company, accredited warehousing company, which is actually accrediting these institutions. As a result, you have to rely on those accredited warehouses where EWRs can be put out, and these EWRs can easily be accessible if the banks and MFIs can collectively go and do it. And I happen to be on the board of Nehmat Collateral, and I can tell you that their model is phenomenal. They're playing a regulatory role, but at the same time, I've asked them that they should be looking at creating these smaller warehouses at a district level so that at least within the 5-kilometer area, these small farmers can reach out, because the tariff of transferring products to a warehouse has to be reasonable in order to really help them. And creating literally a warehouse which has all the facilities available to be able to create a better yield in the system. The small farmer, and that really hurts me a lot. The small farmer gets on the stacking order at the bottom when they have to harvest. As a result, he loses good 10% to 15% of his crop value because it's a late harvest, because the big boys get the machinery before the small boys, and hence, unfortunately, this poor guy continues to remain poor and has no ability to, other than sustain himself at the base level, continue to live. So really, these challenges, I think, collectively, as a sector, we ought to be looking at. So my humble sort of request to regulators, donors, development institutions is really to think that if we really want to get a quick fix in our economy, agri is perhaps one of the biggest quick fix. And if we want to really do some financial inclusion and move people from the baseline poverty to a little bit better life, then perhaps this is yet the opportunity that we all can pursue. We all have worked together. We are committed as PMIC to support. We are pretty much available in terms of providing liquidity as much as we can, given our own liquidity positions. But I don't think we have ever turned our back to any of the MFIs, particularly because we understand how critical these MFIs are to the microfinance ecosystem, and more importantly, they depend on us to support them through the highs and lows. And we are there as a wholesale institution, and we'll continue to play our role. We need help from each and every one of you to see how we can develop this ecosystem. And as a collective team, we need to work together so that we can take this entire journey to the next level and help Pakistan build and hopefully achieve its objectives of food security and financial inclusions. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much. I certainly hope I didn't offend anybody, but it came from my heart and I needed to say it. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Naveed Saab. Next, I'd like to call on stage Dr. Naji Ben Haseen, who is the country director for the World Bank. Dr. Ben Haseen has a PhD in economics from MIT. He joined the World Bank in 2001 after a career with McKinsey, and he has had a very illustrious career, and he's here, so I'll stop the introductions there. Please, sir.
Thank you. Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Assalamu alaikum. Good morning, everyone. And thank you. I'd like to thank the whole team at the Pakistan Microfinance Network for inviting me to this annual event and congratulate them on an exciting agenda. Lots of points to discuss, lots of open questions for the sector. A number of them mentioned in the good talk of the speech of the Chairman PMIC. It's great to see so many guests from the whole industry, and the Deputy Governor of a state bank and Chairman of different institutions. So I'm really honored to be here. Before I start speaking about microfinance, I'd like to remind what are the World Bank's priorities for Pakistan, because the link with microfinance is clear. They all start with G. Number one, girls and boys learning. And we're insisting on girls because they're lagging compared to their boys. Number two, growing healthy. It's the primary healthcare and stunting agenda and food security agenda, in fact. Number three, green and clean Pakistan, and that's the climate-related agenda, the adaptation, the agriculture agenda, food security is there as well. And number four, growing inclusively. And microfinance products and institutions contribute at least to these last two, the inclusive growth, including in agriculture, and I take the point very well with a worrisome trend of the institution of the sector going away from agriculture, but also for food security, for climate resilience, and so this industry is at the center of what we do and what we're trying to achieve with the government in the country. So as was reminded earlier, with a borrower base of more than 9 million people, although I understand one needs to dig into that to see how many are multiple borrowers and what's the real base and whether it's really growing, but I agree the potential is high. And the gross portfolio of about $2 billion, microfinance has been clearly in the past and is still currently a clear catalyst for enhancing access to financial services for the underserved in Pakistan. I think this is a great development, but the needs are much higher and the sector needs support to grow further. Microfinance borrowers greatly outnumber the borrowers from the banking sector, and that's a testimony of the great importance of this sector. But now the sector is, as was mentioned earlier, is clearly feeling the impact of the exogenous shocks that Pakistan has been subject to. Of course, climate-related shocks, and the floods were a major shock there. And it's not a single-year one, because we were reminded of the changing patterns of repayments, changing timings of in the agricultural cycle. And unfortunately, Pakistan being among the top 10 countries being most hit by climate change impacts, the risks in the sector and these patterns, especially for agriculture, will continue. And of course, there were other shocks, the COVID-19 pandemic, locusts, etc. So supporting the growth of the sector at the same time increasing its resilience and increasing the number of products that clients have access to, like microinsurance is one, for example, is absolutely critical for the country and its development. On the one hand, the sector faces problems, both on the liquidity and capital side. This is impacting its ability to lend and to grow. It's operating also in a high interest environment, as you know, making affordability a big challenge for the lower income households or entrepreneurs that want to borrow. But on the other hand, in the current inflationary environment, this is precisely the moment where supporting the sector is important, because it has a unique role in supporting resilience, supporting growth, and the demand for loans, for microinsurance, for microcredit, for microsaving is probably much higher than what the sector can offer today, given the current environment. We believe that with the right enabling environment, the sector has the dynamism. We will see it during this conference, and we heard it already. And outreach, the base the sector is starting from, is wide enough in terms of outreach, in terms of mechanisms of experience and institutions to provide growing and tangible support to those that need it most, through supporting micro-entrepreneurs, small businesses, say restock supplies, helping farmers get ready for the next crop, insure themselves against climate risks, and of course enabling first-time macro enterprises, or helping families reconstruct their homes. We have a big project in Sindh with the government on housing construction following the floods, and what the government is providing through our support and other support, and its own budget in fact, doesn't cover the whole cost of these small houses, resilient houses that are being rebuilt. And many of the households, beneficiary households that were hit, are using their own savings, but many would need possibly to borrow small amounts to finish their houses. So I think that's among the different growing demand in the current environment. That one in Sindh, but also in Balochistan, is important. As you know, the World Bank and the International Finance Corporation has historically been a strong supporter of the microfinance sector. We have an ongoing project called the Financial Inclusion and Infrastructure Project. It has a line of credit for the microfinance sector, as well as an upgradation, a program to upgrade the payment systems with the state bank in the country, which is clearly important for the sector. The line of the credit of the project has been leveraged more than 4 times already, and it benefited close to 500,000 unique beneficiaries, and close to 80% of these are women. So I think these type of initiatives are clearly promising, and we would like to do more in the sector. The project has also provided demand-based liquidity to microfinance institutions as part of the flood rehabilitation efforts, because after the floods many were badly hit, and the repayment rate timing suffered, and repayment, there were delays in repayments, obviously. We also have a housing finance project that is currently under implementation, which has liquidity for microcredit for housing, as well as a credit risk sharing facility that the microfinance sector can access. Microcredit for housing becomes very important for Pakistan, and as I said, especially in the context of the flood reconstruction efforts, which will take years. These are not things that can be solved. There's 2 million houses that need to be rebuilt in Sindh, and that's just Sindh. It's not counting Balochistan, and this will require a lot of support and funding to other affected households which were in the poorest districts of the country and of the province, as I say. So the microfinance can become, the microfinance sector can become the key financier of most of the real economy. When you look at the numbers and you look at the structure of the economy and how small firms are in the country, microfinance can be the biggest financier of the real economy, and it could cater to millions of micro and small businesses. However, the uptake and diversification of MSME products has been slower than anticipated. And this is something that I'm sure will be discussed during this conference, and to strategize how to meaningfully move the needle on this and see how the sector can expand the product. I know my colleague Namus, who is here, is on a panel later on the future of the microfinance sector. I think it's tomorrow. And I look forward to learning from her what the sector and other participants in the panel, how the sector can expand its set of products to MSMEs. And it is absolutely also imperative that the sector digitizes, as was mentioned earlier, and I agree there's no necessarily a trade-off between digitization and brick and mortar, but digitization needs to expand outreach, to expand efficiency of loan processing, and the sector also needs to develop additional product lines to cater for emerging needs, in particular for MSMEs, as I said, housing finance, and also graduating micro borrowers. It is finally also time to make progress on, as was mentioned, on a long discussion that has been going on for at least a decade, I hear, on the potential for a climate risk facility. It's all the more urgent given the shocks Pakistan has faced recently, but it will be impactful at the sectoral as well as firm level to have such facility and to build the sustainability and resilience of the sector. We know that COVID and after that the floods have hit the sector hard, and right now the World Bank is in active and advanced discussions actually to developing a proposal to fund such a climate risk facility. We have a colleague here, Luis, who is a disaster finance specialist, and he'll be in a session to discuss this and the design we have in mind for such facilities. Ladies and gentlemen, the sector is at an inflection point. We need it to grow and play a big role in financing the real economy, particularly in agriculture, I agree with you. However, the growing prevalence of nano loans, of very, very, very small loans, is something to be looked at strategically in the broader context of the sector, because the international experience and the evidence is clear that these loans are useful for households, but it's more about consumption smoothing, which is an important function, but given the size of the sector, to think about the trade-offs there in terms of financing more growth-oriented loans. And a conference like this one can help through the debate and exchanges in the panels, can help build a common vision of how key stakeholders could work together to develop such a vision and to support the growth of the sector. I would like to thank and congratulate you all for continuing to advance financial inclusion in Pakistan, and I'd like to really thank the Pakistan Microfinance Network for the role it plays, and rest assured the World Bank and the IFC will stand with you, will stand with Pakistan in the development of this key sector. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Dr. Ben Haseen. What you've been talking about and what we've been hearing of since the morning, there are detailed sessions on all of these topics at the following days of the conference, so I'd strongly recommend everyone to please be there for them. Our conversations since the morning have created a very nice segue for our next speaker. I'd like to call on stage Mr. Zainul Haq Qureshi, who is the CEO of the Asia Insurance Company. Zain has over 12 years of experience across multiple facets of the insurance business. At Asia Insurance, he's been spearheading innovation and change via digitization. Please welcome on the stage. And
thank you, Zainab. And I'll begin by thanking also the Pakistan Microfinance Network. As you can see, I'm one of the very few insurance people here. I see Neilfer right here, so makes two of us. This is the third year of my attending the conference, and it is still the two of us. And so what I'd like to talk about is our journey in learning about microfinance and how it relates to insurance, and what's changed in our approach since then. And I'd like to end with some notes on how insurance can add value to microfinance. Of course, there will be some points for our distinguished leaders from the regulatory side, the SECP and the State Bank as well. When we started out looking at microfinance a little over 3 years ago, the standard approach we had is that here is a set of products that we have used on commercial banking primarily. Pledged stocks, some elements of agriculture insurance, crop and livestock. And let's look at the portfolios of these microfinance institutions, these microfinance banks, and present the same products to them. Over the course of 3 years, I can confidently say that has been a failure. The microfinance sector needs very different things from commercial banks and from corporate lending as far as insurance is concerned. Of course, in other facets as well, the speakers already have touched on that. But definitely in our experience also. And so what we've learned is that there are some very peculiar challenges that this sector faces. Naveed Saab has mentioned liquidity as being one of them. And we feel that that is something we had missed out in understanding this sector. What are the challenges faced by farmers or other borrowers, MSME primarily, and how those relate to what we can offer in insurance that we had not been offering before. So when we look at the customer centricity of microfinance, it is definitely operating at a level that is far higher than we see anywhere else in the sector, insurance included, a conventional insurance at least. And what we have seen there is that this understanding of the customer, the cash cycles they have, the liquidity crunch that they go through, particularly in times of stress on the industry, are something that we do not see on the commercial banking side. I'll give an example from the floods that we had last year in Sindh. The process started, the rains started in June, July, carried on throughout August and into the winter. And we could see, being a provider of agriculture insurance, that yields are going to be low, certain areas are completely flooded, and anyone who was borrowing at that time is going to suffer losses. However, it took us until March of this year, 9 months after we knew that these loans are, if not a write-off, definitely under a severe repayment crunch. It was 9 months before we could settle all those claims. And the issue was not so much that we as an industry, we're stingy with our money or we don't want to pay. That's not the case. The challenge was the regulatory framework in place required us to go and verify that these losses have occurred. Carrying that activity out on such large scale of an entire province, and we are, mashallah, a very large country, takes time, it takes costs. And ultimately, all those things combine to lengthen this claim payment cycle. What we have learned is that the problem farmers face is that if you give them 100 rupees or 100% of their loss 9 months from now, that is not really of any value. It is far better, as an example, to give 30, 40, 50% of their loss today. Because the problem is this liquidity cycle. They are already going from one loan cycle or one repayment cycle to the next, and any disruption to that has long-term damaging impacts. What we saw in Sindh is the loss of 2 cropping seasons. Because they could not repay, someone had to either refinance a loan or they were not eligible for borrowing again. And so they slipped into poverty. Many of them slipped into poverty. This is based on, of course, on the high quality research done by the PMN itself. We avidly consume the MicroWatch report that they churn out every year. You can see from those insights as well, the problem we're dealing with is not simply about severity of losses or quantum of losses. It is about the cyclicality of these losses. And we feel this is one of the areas where we need help, not just from the microfinance sector itself, but from our regulators also, to allow some leeway to experiment with items. At Asia Insurance, we have launched Pakistan's first weather index program. And the beauty of this product is that it allows claims payments within the cropping season. Before the season is out, we had paid claims twice for excessive rainfall in KP. The modeling that we have done shows that if this product was rolled out in Sindh last year, during at the time when the heavy rains came in, we would have paid out probably more than we ended up paying, and we would have paid it out in August last year, latest, compared to March of this year. And this would have been able to rescue many farmers along the way, not just for repaying loans, but actually getting them access to finance at a time where they need it most. Whether it was just about repayment or actually at a base level survival. And so what we need is support from bodies such as the UN who are here. We of course have seen PMICs taking many initiatives to help the microfinance sector experiment with these things, launch some pilot programs, and see what the results can be like. So what I would like to talk about, and again in terms of what we've learned on the microfinance side, is the importance of operational expenses. Operational expenses, of course, are important as an insurance company, as any for-profit operator, even profit. Operational efficiency is to longevity and sustainability, of course. But as it relates to microfinance, Kabir Sahib had also mentioned about the necessarily high market rates that we're operating at. And so every percent, every %, saved has a huge magnitude of value to add. And our thrust has been on finding ways that insurance can help reduce operational expenses for microfinance operators. Parametric insurance is one of those things. You take away costs related to the cost of capital for late repayments. You take away costs related to the on-site physical surveys that need to be done. And these saved costs can then be passed on to the farmers as well. So that both the liquidity increases, the cash cycle is shortened, and overall they're able to graduate into being either just better borrowers themselves, or you're able to broaden the base also. The interventions we're seeing here also then blend into the world that we see of financial inclusion for women. In the microfinance sector, or in, now we'll call it the microinsurance sector, we've seen, for example, that there are some asset classes that are just present lying there on the ground, but we're unable to capitalize on them. One of the main ones that we have seen is livestock. Livestock is primarily tended to by women folk in the rural sector, even in the peri-urban areas. But we also see livestock is not collateralized. As per the latest surveys carried out by the Bureau of Statistics, there is close to $40 billion worth of asset, barely about 4% of which comes into financing. These are just cattle. This is not counting camels, not counting goats and sheep. And all of these are evidently not capitalized for want of proof of ownership. There is technology available today. We are using technology available that can individually identify livestock. And this should form the basis of a large collateral base so that we can make the most of the balance sheets. I'll hesitate to call them the limited balance sheets, but definitely the very much exposed balance sheets that Naved Sahib mentioned as well, and that Kabir Sahib mentioned also. What we would like to offer is insurance is a way to bolster your own balance sheets in the microfinance sector to make that money go much further. There are initiatives around the world that are very interesting that I feel should be given some leeway for the sector, for microfinance banks when it comes to the state bank, but for the microfinance institutions when it comes to the SECP, to allow them to experiment and to try these things. Electronic warehouse receipts is one thing, using that as collateral for further lending. But I believe that the concept of using an insurance policy as collateral itself, whether that is a policy out on your livestock, on your farm, on your tractor, pick any asset you like, there should be some leeway where we're able to help these people use the assets they have and make them go further, rather than having it restricted that these are the assets that are available on a more, I would say, high regulated environment, and that those are the asset classes where we must remain. And so I'll bring it back to this, that customer centricity in microfinance has forced us, has taught us that we need to adapt insurance products to suit the microfinance sector. We have digital livestock insurance available to reduce operational costs of livestock. We have parametric insurance available to reduce the cost of crop insurance. And we have other kinds of portfolio level insurance interventions that can reduce risk at the portfolio level for MFIs and MFBs, so that their same capital base, their same equity base has the protection that they can make these loans go further and continue the service of Pakistan. I'll be participating in a panel, I believe it's tomorrow as well, and in the meantime I look to absorb more and more of the microfinance sector. But I would like to leave with this message that we've learned a lot from the microfinance sector on how to tailor insurance for this sector. But what I would ask now is that the sector itself needs to take some leaps and make the most of this combined knowledge we have and try things that can increase the user base for your own. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Zain. We'll now have a short video on the performance of the sector in the last year. Tech team, if you could please have the video played.
The microfinance sector in Pakistan has shown amazing growth in the past decade. So what did we do to make a difference? We believe in financial inclusion and that everyone deserves to have access to banking services, no matter their income. Microfinance is a valuable tool for poverty eradication, giving small business owners a chance to borrow, invest, and grow. More than 40% of microfinance loans are distributed to women, empowering them to take control of their destiny. More than rupees 1,500 billion has been distributed in the last 5 years in microfinance loans to underserved and marginalized communities all across Pakistan. And we're just getting started. The future looks bright as we build on what we've achieved. More digitization, more job creation. With our partners, we believe in sustainable, ethical lending for all. Low-cost education, low-cost housing, low-cost agriculture, renewable energy, MSEs. The microfinance.
Great, thank you so much. Next up, I'd like to call our first guest of honor, which is Mr. Akif Saeed, who is the chairman at the Securities and Exchange Commission of Pakistan. Mr. Saeed joined the SECP in 2004, where he has headed many divisions. He has extensive regulatory, operational, and business knowledge of various infrastructures and capital markets. At the SECP, Mr. Saeed was instrumental in establishing frameworks for the for the real estate investment trusts and private equity. He was also pioneering he also pioneered the merger of the 3 stock exchanges and the achievement of the ISCO benchmark principles for the security market. Mr. Saeed, could we please have you on stage?
Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Mr. Naji bin Hasne, Country Director for Pakistan, World Bank. Mr. Salimullah, Deputy Governor, State Bank of Pakistan, a personal friend and somebody who always have a smile on his face. Distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, Assalamu alaikum. I must start with acknowledging Pakistan Microfinance Network for continuing its tradition of holding their annual conference and being a forward-looking industry association, engaging all stakeholders to shape the future of the microfinance sector in Pakistan. I would also like to commend the organizers for choosing the theme towards sustainable and inclusive finance, as it fittingly captures the pivotal role microfinance can play towards meeting the social and economic needs of Pakistan. It is a pleasure for me to share my views on this illustrious gathering about the triumphs of microfinance over a span of last few years, despite all the challenges and the roles SECP with respect to nurturing the sustainability and inclusive regulatory framework. We at the SECP, being cognizant of our mandate covering capital market, insurance, and non-bank finance companies, along with microfinance institutions, know that in order to achieve equitable economic growth, there is a dire need to ensure access to finance reaches the grassroots level as it is a prerequisite for objective distribution of economic opportunities, poverty reduction, and achieving financial stability. And when we talk of equal opportunity, it is safe to say that no other sector offers a more inclusive approach than the non-banking microfinance sector. Considering the distinguished lineup of speakers and market leaders of the microfinance sector, I will not go into too much detail about the impact of the microfinance on the economic landscape of Pakistan. However, it is important to emphasize that SECP introduced a regulatory framework for non-bank microfinance companies in 2015, considering the pivotal role of the microfinance sector in providing financial services to individuals and small businesses that are often excluded from the traditional banking services. SECP initiative to regulate these entities through the dedicated NBMFC regime address this gap, and the outcomes have been tangible and promising. Personally, when we were taking over this particular, I had my doubts, so acknowledging that it has outperformed, at least at my personal level. The sector has recorded consistent growth in recent years, and further refinements have been introduced over the years to promote the case of entry and compliance. Ladies and gentlemen, the microfinance is a very unique sector and has adopted an inclusive model of finance. Considering low financial literacy coupled with our cultural norms and social constraints, women in Pakistan have historically not been part of the mainstream business ecosystem. However, the NBMFC have changed this mindset, and women-specific loans have exceeded Rs 82 billion, covering 2.5 million women borrowers. However, this is only the tip of the proverbial iceberg, as there exists an opportunity exists to reach an additional 20 million women. To foster congenial and cohesive working environment for women, SECP has directed the NBFC through a circular policy for gender diversity to be prepared at board level of NBFC. The aim of this circular is to formulate and implement gender diversity policies for recruitment and retaining talented women and promote equal opportunity. The boards are not only required to formulate policies, but also required to oversee effective implementation by reviewing the progress against the assigned targets, thus making diversity objective as part of the key performance indicators. NBFCs are also required to maintain gender disaggregated data, which was initially limited to listed companies and now has been extended to overall NBFCs. As a result, almost 44% of NBFCs have approved exclusive gender diversity policies. However, to achieve parity, all the players in this sector must embrace gender equality within their respective structures. Here I would like to share some facts that even though women borrowers constitute a majority of their customers, women constitute only 23% of the employees of NBMFC, which is even lower at the senior level at 21%. Similarly, most NBFC do not have gender targets for staffing or gender balanced governance structure. This has a direct impact on promoting inclusivity in supply chain, marketing, and product development side. In perspective of governance, SECP has already mandated inclusion of female representation on the board. While this is helpful in breaking the glass ceiling, it is not enough, and there is need to encourage more diversity in governance and operational structures. Therefore, I would urge the NBMFC to develop and enact internal gender policy with specific targets for female participation, especially in decision-making and customer-facing roles in the field. Similarly, on product side, it is also important to introduce innovative products and address the issues being faced by women borrowers, especially with respect to lack of financial literacy, social constraints, and collateral conditions for loans, which is hindering women borrowers to borrow at a lower rates. SECP is also working with stakeholders for raising awareness, financial literacy, and encouraging women entrepreneurship. The second thing I would like to talk about is the sustainability aspect. Typically, within the microfinance, the word sustainable is referred in context of institutions that are financially viable. However, today, with increasing emphasis on responsible finance, it has added new dimensions to the factors considered as measure of success for NBMFCs, that is the environmental factors. In perspective of environmental impact, one of the main pillars of UN Sustainable Development Goals 2030 agenda is an area where we, like most developing countries, are lagging behind. While at the same time are amongst the countries most vulnerable by climate change. At our end, SECP considers this sustainability as a priority. It is in its regulatory agenda and has recently published a position paper on ESG regulatory roadmap. This was published somewhere late last year, and subsequently we have held 2 conferences, and we are targeting to issue a guideline on ESG by end of this year. And it will be in the guideline form, so let the people and the boards look at it and adopt as per their needs and as per their situation. NBFCs and their clients, particularly low-income individuals and small businesses, are vulnerable to the impact of climate change and must find ways to address climate change and respond to 2 broad categories: mitigation and adaptation. Promoting clean energy products and agriculture innovation addresses both the stated categories. We have to combat climate change at household, micro businesses, NBMFCs and systemic level. Awareness among the customers to reduce carbon emission, along with the partners of NBFCs with climate-friendly service providers to design a perfect combo, is need of the hour. We have already witnessed how adaptive and low-carbon agriculture sector in developed countries. NBMFCs should also adopt towards green perspective instead of relying exclusively on non-loan products. In this regard, bundling services in shape of non-financial institution solutions, such as advisory services, can prove to be instrumental for small businesses. Moreover, being an agrarian economy country with the growing food demand, NBMFCs can play a significant role in promoting food security by focus on designing innovative and climate-resilient agriculture product. Like I said earlier, we have envisaged under our ESG roadmap creating synergy and collaboration with climate-focused organizations. We are already working on a digital online portal by the name of ESG Sustain, which will bring in the market players and showcase and allow them a one-stop shop in the sense that all the framework, the advisories, and the experiences shared by the different companies would be at the showcase, so people can learn from each other. I think this again would be up and running by end of this year. To conclude, I would like to assure you that the SECP will continue to play its role as an enabler of growth for the non-bank microfinance companies in close liaison with all market players. And I'll strongly encourage Pakistan Microfinance Network to share the recommendation of this particular conference, 2-day conference, so that we can look at it and we can have dialogue in terms of how to implement these. And with these, I congratulate Pakistan Microfinance Network and wish you all the best for the rest of the conference. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Akif Saab. Next on, I'd like to call on stage our second distinguished guest for the morning. Can I please have on stage Mr. Salimullah, who is the Deputy Governor of the State Bank of Pakistan. Salimullah Saab is a seasoned central banker with over 28 years of experience at multiple senior positions with the SBP. He's worked in agricultural credit, development finance, Islamic banking, and microfinance. He's also, before his role as the Deputy Governor, he served as the Managing Director for the Pakistan Security Printing Corporation. Thank you so much for being with us, sir. Please come onto the podium.
Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamu alaikum. Mr. Naji, Country Director World Bank, Mr. Hakif Saeed, the Chairman SCCP, Mr. Naveed Khan, Mr. Kabir Naqvi, and all the distinguished guests. It's a real pleasure to be here. And I was really mesmerized by some of the speeches and some of the points raised by Kabir and my very senior colleague, Mr. Naveed. So microfinance, let me say this, on my personal ground is my passion. And let me assure this very august gathering that State Bank fully owns and believes in the utility of microfinance, both in poverty alleviation as well as in financial inclusion. So we have full belief and faith in the ability and utility of microfinance in addressing the grassroots level issues with respect to financial inclusion, with respect to this poverty alleviation. And let me congratulate Pakistan Microfinance Network for organizing this event. And I believe that we will be able to have some good practicable recommendations that will be coming out from this event for the 2 days event, that will be providing the sort of a real guidance both to all the stakeholders, and that includes the regulators, that includes the donors, that includes the industry practitioners. Yes, there are issues faced by the industry. The industry has done remarkably well in the last, say, 10 to 15 years. For the last 3 years, since the initiation of pandemic, and then the floods that we had witnessed last year, that has created severe challenges for the industry. That has created challenges both for the microfinance banks regulated by the State Bank, as well as by the non-banking microfinance institutions. Microfinance banks have faced issues with respect to the portfolio quality, with respect to the repayments by their clients. Similarly, MFIs, although they have fared relatively better with respect to their portfolio quality, but they are facing severe issues with respect to the liquidity. We must see that how can we make such mechanisms and such arrangements so that these microfinance institutions continue to have the access to the liquidity. थोड़ा सा पानी भी दे देंगे. So I fully endorse and agree with some of the concerns and observations made by Kabir and Naveed Saab. My apologies. That this is a very, very critical time for the industry. If we don't come up with the right kind of solutions, then we may lose the great amount of work and contribution that has been made by the industry. So for that purpose, we need to work together. We need to work in a collaborative mechanism. we at the State Bank level, at the SECP level, as far as the non-banking microfinance institutions are concerned, at the donors level, at the level of Pakistan Microfinance Network. So the industry, the regulators, the donors, the apex bodies need to collaborate and sit together and develop most practical mechanism that could enable the microfinance banks as well as the microfinance institutions to have access to capital, to have access to liquidity, to continue to provide funding to the microfinance borrowers and the clientele. For that purpose, let me emphasize one thing, that while you will find us at the forefront of this initiative. I have already requested my team that we need to develop a strategy to revive the microfinance industry to address these issues. But at the same time, the industry will have to provide that comfort to the regulator, to the donors, and to the apex bodies that they are really they are having those governance systems and the delivery models that are instrumental in helping the clientele. If that comfort is coming from the industry, then it will be much easier for us to come up with much more better initiatives. And for that matter, let me emphasize one thing, that we want that the industry should remain focused on its key objective of helping the low-income segment and the poor clientele in improving its income levels through productive business avenues. For that purpose, we must see and reassess, as Mr. Naji highlighted, that we must see that whether these nano loans are contributing towards asset creation or contributing towards asset depletion, because these nano loans, they are largely consumption oriented. While we don't undermine the need of these consumption oriented loans, but we must see that should that be the only focus, or should that be the key focus of the microfinance banks, which are meant for primarily to help the poor people to improve their income levels. So are these nano loans contributing towards the improvement in the income levels? We must see that, and the rates at which these nano loans are disbursed, that are also needs to be assessed. I would encourage the panelists of various sessions that they must see that if there is a need to see that how can we better use that platform of digital financing, particularly towards the improvement in the income level of the clientele, rather than encouraging them to indulge in more consumption and be more indebted. I would also like to emphasize, just to see the gold loans. Here again, the core focus, when I was having collaboration with the microfinance industry at at the very initial stages in early 2000s, 2001 and so we all had that belief that we will be working together for poverty alleviation, for asset creation. Are these gold loans creating those assets? Rather, in my opinion, if you see my personal view, they may result into asset depletion in the poor and the lower segments of the economy. The poor woman having some small amount of jewelry available with her could be lending that, could be giving that jewelry to her husband or to the male member to get the loan, and that loan may be consumed by the male counterpart, and the woman is left with asset depletion. So we must see that, and that all these things are critical for giving that comfort to the regulators, to the donors, that the real objective for which the microfinance institutions and the microfinance banks have been created, they are doing that activity. And let me repeat and reiterate, we have firm belief in the ability and utility of the microfinance industry. But to see that how to energies on creating that income generation activities for our clientele. When Navisa was talking about that agri-tech model, I was thinking that as if I am speaking. You see that this is the real model, that we must provide an overall ecosystem to our clients. The clientele is too weak. They cannot have the inputs at good price. They cannot have the best inputs. So I wrote a small piece, I think 7-8 years back, on the very same lines, that let's have those interventions whereby these microfinance banks or even Islamic banks or the MFIs can replace these artis with these interventions whereby they can get quality inputs at very, very attractive prices, rather than being exploited by the RT or rather than being exploited by the other stakeholders. Similarly, when you are going to sell your produce, again they are exploited. They don't have that clout to fetch good prices. They are exploited by the RTs and the middlemen. So how can we provide that overall ecosystem, be in the form of the consultancy, so that they can have best use of water, best use of pesticides, and similarly they could have best inputs and should be able to sell their produce at good prices. And this is not only relevant for the agriculture sector. Agriculture sector is the prime. I would agree with Navisa and fully endorse him. But at the same time, this is absolutely true for other micro enterprises. They are very small. If we can create that ecosystem whereby we can provide them the quality inputs, we can provide them those trainings whereby they could produce the quality products, and then there is some mechanism available even at the PMN level or at the industry level, whereby some hand-holding sort of mechanism is available to enable them to market and sell their produce. So just mere provision of financial services would not be enough. We will have to focus on an overall ecosystem where our customers can really benefit from the financial services that are being provided by these institutions. Unless our customer is prospering, we cannot prosper. So we will have to make sure that the people we are dealing with, our customers, they are prospering. It will ensure sustainability of the MFIs, MFBs, and all the other stakeholders if my customer is surviving, is prospering. So we must focus that how we can tailor and adjust our interventions so that the real objective of hand-holding the real customers at the grassroots level, they could be brought up. And as Kabir was saying, that although the number seems to be very fancy, that we have over 9.3 million clienteles, but still more than 3.2 million are the nano clients. And then there are multiple loans. So as far as the households are concerned, we have just reached not more than 10-15%. Still 80-85% people are still left on the informal money lenders and all these RTs. I did a survey when I was looking at this microfinance sector and the development finance sector of somewhere in 2010 or 2011. So 75% of the farmers were dependent on informal sectors, not on MFIs, not on MFEs, on RPs. And the terms of trade of those RPs were very, very odd for the farmers. So we must see that how can we really make an impact and expand this outreach. This 10-15% is just the tip of the iceberg. So let me reiterate that our full support is available for the sector. As I was introducing myself to Naji, that I am the DG for the development side. So I'm not wearing the stability side. Stability is very, very important, but at the same time, stability will come when the institutions are flourishing, when the customers are flourishing. So we must create that ecosystem where the microfinance institutions have that liquidity, have that access to funds, and then we have that mechanism to ensure either at the level of State Bank, at the level of SCCP, at the level of PMIC, and at the level of PMN, that they are doing their real job. We have that overall ecosystem developed collectively. And I would reiterate that let's work together and develop a strategy. There is a problem. If we say that there's no problem, there is an issue. It's a very, very challenging environment. We must together and come up with a strategy could revive the sector. Lastly, let me emphasize, as Raji has also covered this, that climate risk facility. We must have that facility. We are interacting with World Bank, we are interacting with ADB, and we are in discussion with the relevant stakeholders. I believe that this is a very, very essential prerequisite to allow the industry to grow. So let me assure you, in my final concluding remarks, that we fully believe in the utility of microfinance, and we will be going all out to help the sector to revive and do its real job. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Salimullah Saab. And I think Salimullah Saab kind of summed up what we've been hearing from the morning, when he used the words actually, that everything needs to be done for the client. And everybody needs to come together. It has to be an all hands on deck approach, whether it is the microfinance providers, whether it is the regulators, whether it is the funders or the multilateral institutions that are working for financial inclusion in Pakistan. So thank you so much, sir. And thank you so much to all of our esteemed speakers in the morning, from the morning onwards. We will now shift to a very special presentation of Lifetime Achievement Awards to some of the stalwarts of microfinance in Pakistan. For the ceremony, I would like to request Mr. Akif Said Saab, who is the chairman of the SCCP, to please come on stage. I would also like to request Salimullah Saab to please come back on stage. And I'd like to request Dr. Ben Haseen to also please come on stage. Has he left? Huh? Okay. I think Dr. Ben Haseen had to leave. Could I please ask Mohsin to come on stage for the distribution of these awards? Now, these awards are very special to us because they're going to, some very special people that are much loved by the entire microfinance sector. The first award, and I would request Akif Said Saab to give this award, goes to Mr. Ghalib Nishta. Of course, we all know Ghalib Saab as the much loved ex-chairman of the Pakistan Microfinance Network. Ghalib Saab holds under his belt a robust 24-year tenure as the president of the Khoshali Bank, and he is the one who actually led the bank over its best period of growth and ascent with a stellar focus on the mission of the organization and the commercial viability of the institution. His service to microfinance is commendable, and the work that he has done for the microfinance sector is something that we are all reaping the benefit of. Thank you so much, Ghalib Saab, for your service. The next award that we have is a posthumous award. It is for Mr. Anwar Rashid, who we all, of course, know as one of the major driving forces behind the OPP. We are recognizing Anwar Saab's exceptional contributions to development in Pakistan. Can I please request Sharik Rehan Saab, who is the CEO of the OPP, to come on stage to accept this award? Sharik Saab, are you in the room? Great. So, of course, we all know that the OPP was one of the first organizations to do microfinance and microcredit in Pakistan, and, you know, with the community-based program in Karachi. So we would like to recognize the efforts of Anwar Rashid Saab. And of course, we know Sharik Saab has very large shoes to fill. Thank you so much, Sharik Saab. Next up, again, we have a much-loved advocate of microfinance, which is Mr. Zubair Sumro. Mr. Zubair Sumro is a seasoned banker with over 30 years of banking experience. Of course, other than the banking work that Samra Saab has done, he has really been a big advocate of microfinance, first as a board member of the PPAF, then as the founding chairman of the PMIC. One of the things that we've been talking about is how banks need to lend more to the microfinance sector. I think as the chairman of the NBP, that is one gate or one door that Sumro Saab very effectively opened for the microfinance sector. So thank you so much, sir, for your service. And thank you so much for your contributions to the microfinance industry. Thank you so much, sir. And thank you, Mohsin, thank you, Salimullah Saab, thank you, Akif Saab. Yes, thank you so much. Can we please have the setup on stage? So next up, we have an MOU signing between the Pakistan Microfinance Network and Marcomatics. From the Pakistan Microfinance Network, we will have the CEO, Mr. Mohsin Ahmed, on stage, and from the Marcomatics team, we will have their CEO, Emma Rashid Saab, who will sign an MOU for doing best-of-class research for the sector. I think one of our speakers earlier on also mentioned, I think it was Zain, who mentioned the research paper that was done on resilience and insurance by the PMN. So we really look towards the PMN for the stellar role and the pioneering role that they provide in terms of research for the microfinance sector. So we will have a quick signing of this MOU. I would request Emma Rashid Saab and Mohsin Saab to say a few words about this MOU and the importance of this MOU for the sector.
Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah. They have basically asked me to explain everything extempore, but I think all I have to say is, coming out of all the speeches that I have been hearing from the morning, what we are up against, it is not 15% penetration or reach of microfinance, it is only 3%. Considering 38 million households in Pakistan, 20% are enabled, financially enabled, they don't need a loan. So we are left with 30 million. Out of that, we are servicing only 1 million households. So you can very well imagine the kind of gap we are talking about, and most of it is obviously a bike which is lended on 40% annual loan. So that is the challenge we are up against. I have a background of research last almost 2.5, 3 decades, and most of it is with the FMCG sector. If you recall, 30 years ago or 40 years ago, everybody is having a bottled water in front of 40 years ago, there was no bottled water. If you even talk about it, people would call you insane. Water? Do you think anyone would buy water, pay money to get water? It was out of question. 30 years ago, diapers. Nobody could even think of purchasing a disposable diaper. Women at home used to, wash it every time. There was no disposable diapers. But today, the penetration of bottled water is almost 70% individually. The penetration of diapers in households where there are kids under age 5 or 6, the penetration is over 70%. How it happened is because of the extensive investment in the research, not on customer satisfaction or mystery shopping. That is the only mandated research which happens in the category, and I hardly see research is happening on the category understanding. What are the barriers why people are not opting for microfinance? What are the issues they are facing when they go and try to get a loan? We never talked about it. We never thought the second area, are we reaching out to the right people? Because one of the recent studies that we have done, we realized the quality of life impact cannot be determined because all those who lended money were not below the poverty line. Majority of it, a large majority of it, is already above the poverty line. So are we reaching out to the right audience is the other question that we should ask ourselves in order to increase, in order to reach the remaining 29 million households who would want a loan but they couldn't get one. The third thing, sustainability is of course a challenge. Sustainable and inclusive is a challenge. We have to see who can afford to pay it back, yes. So where to draw the line? There has to be a new set of indicators, a new set of variables defining their quality of life, their affordability. A new set of product evolution is required, because I have never heard anyone talking about doing a conjoint analysis in the microfinance sector to make a portfolio optimization. I have never heard people doing larger scale concept understanding or product development exercises with their respective customers to actually develop what they want. The third area where we think research can definitely help a lot is standardization of customer satisfaction and mystery shopping, because hand-holding, Salim Saab just mentioned, some hand-holding should be there. We are not saying that we are creating a benchmark or a benchmark service, but as PMN and us together can establish a gold standard for mystery shopping and customer service so that everybody, every single institution in this ecosystem gets a report which is benchmarked against the industry. If they are not getting individual reports from all the banks, at least they get a benchmark of the industry average so that they can benchmark themselves. And unlike the current practices, every single institution who under the state bank regulation is bound to do a customer satisfaction or mystery shopping survey, they are molding it the way they want it. The questionnaire design, are you really satisfied? I'm sure you must be really satisfied with me. That's the kind, if we do non-standard surveys. Outside Pakistan, there's complete benchmarking service. There's a global organization who does that. And that single organization is responsible to do surveys for every single bank, and every single bank is mandated to use their service for benchmarking, for process improvement. So these are the areas, and why going into this venture. We were in the discussion, rather, initially the relationship started 6 years ago almost, and we were working together as partners. We believe we know research, and they believe they know the category. So now we believe augmenting the two, someone who understands the category and someone who understands consumer behavior, consumer science. If we combine the power of two, it is going to make a difference in terms of exploring those 29 million remaining who are still out there in the market waiting for their chance to get a loan. So I think that is pretty much it. Mohsin.
थैंक यू अहमद साहब. मैं सिर्फ एक चीज़ ऐड करना चाहूँगा. तो एट द सेक्टर लेवल हम कुछ कंज्यूमर बिहेवियर और रिसर्च करेंगे मिलके, जिसमें एक चीज़ तो हम और देखना चाहते हैं विच इज़ इन द फॉर्म ऑफ लॉन्गिट्यूडनल स्टडी और पैनल डेटा के साथ, क्योंकि जो करंट मैक्रो इकोनॉमिक क्राइसिस आया है उसके अंदर मल्टीपल प्लेयर्स जो लेंडिंग करते हैं, दे हैव क्वेश्चन अराउंड द डिमांड साइड, and do they still have the capacity to repay and at the rates at which they are being loaned at this current time. तो हम एक पैनल डेटा के ऊपर जाना चाहते हैं जिसमें हम over time ये and with different bumps and economic cycles होती हैं, we can analyze the consumer behavior of the clients also. So that's one of the key research that we are going to do together. So thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Mohsin and Emir Saab. We would like to now present some mementos to the speakers of our opening plenary. Can we please have Mohsin on stage to hand out these mementos? The first memento is for Naved Saab. Can we please have Naved Khan Saab on stage to receive his memento? दूसरी साइड से, जहाँ पे रिबन लगा हुआ है, दूसरी साइड से. Next, definitely. Next up, we'd like to call someone from the World Bank to receive Dr. Ben Haseen's memento on his behalf. Do we have anyone here from the World Bank? All right. Next up, we'd like to call Zain Qureshi, the CEO of Asia Insurance. Next, can I please request the Honorable Akif Said Saab to please come on stage to receive his memento. Can I please now request Salimullah Saab to come on stage to receive his memento? So the PMN team has asked if we could have all of these speakers come outside in front of the media wall for a group photo. Oh, so first, we are Salimullah Saab, sorry. आप प्लीज स्टेज पे आ जाएंगे एक ग्रुप फोटो के लिए. आकिफ साहब आप भी प्लीज़ आ जाइए. नावेद साहब प्लीज़ आप भी आ जाइए. जैन आप भी आ जाइए प्लीज़. थैंक यू. The PMN team also would like a photo of all of you in front of the media wall, and Manur is going to now take you to the media wall. Navid sir, they want a picture in front of the media. Could you please come as soon as our esteemed guests come back to the room, we will start with our first plenary session, which is a large roundtable or a large panel discussion on a very pertinent topic of coming up with sustainable climate solutions through microfinance. Of course, Mohsin will come here and set the scene for this session, but you know what we've been hearing since the morning from all of our esteemed speakers has been that there is a big dearth of products that can actually go towards resilience of low-income households, specifically talking about the resilience of low-income farmers or farmers that are called smallholder farmers. So we're hoping that in this session, we have a multi-stakeholder sort of panel discussion where we have practitioners, we have insurance companies, we have digital and nano credit companies, you know, and of course it's being led by Louis Alton from the World Bank, who has a specialization in integrating disaster management in public finance frameworks. So it is going to be an interesting panel, and we're going to actually head right into the panel post this, and we are now going to have tea. So just bear with us for 5 minutes as our guests, who are very, very popular, make it to the media wall and back.